Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to Eating Peace this week. One of the most powerful, stressful, difficult stories. It's going to sound so simple, but when it comes to eating and this whole problem, this whole dynamic is believing the thought that you want it. You want to eat the food. There's that food and you want it. Seems really true, right? Seems really true before you eat it. But let's check it out today. I have everyone do this in the Eating Peace immersion. We sit with this belief, and then there's some interesting oppositional beliefs that are also assumed. And one of the key ones is, it will make me fat. So if you have those both running at the same time, they are completely opposing each other. And it's like smashing against each other, and there's a war going on. So important to question both of those. But let's just do I want it today. I'm sure you've told yourself that you want something and that something's wrong with you for wanting something. And look at you, you just ate the whole thing and now you're stuffed. And you even kept on eating more and hunted down more food. Maybe you even binge ate, like that frantic, speedy, quick eating, where you shoveled it in and you weren't paying any attention to what was going on in your body. When we do have that experience, we'll say to ourselves, what is wrong with me? And feel guilt and shame and frustration and hatred for ourselves, just hatred. What is wrong with you? And that keeps you stuck in a closed loop. Okay, but let's look at I want it. Let's look. Before it even happens, and you can even check in and see where your hunger level is in the body. Let's say you're pretty dang hungry, and a thought of food comes to mind. You want it. Is that true? Might seem like yes. Sure, I do. How do you react when you believe that thought in that moment? I consider what I'm doing and how my day and my schedule goes, and I think about getting some food soon. I might be moved towards making a meal, sitting down with a plate of something. Who knows what it is, but it seems like the body is telling me that it's hungry and it's time. There isn't a lot of stress about that unless I start believing I shouldn't want it, right? Or there isn't any food around in sight for miles and no time to get any for hours, and I might project ahead that I'm going to get too hungry later. But in this moment, it doesn't feel very stressful, and I might move to eating. But let's say we're in the first bite. Let's say you're just about to take that first bite of food. You want it. Is that true? So this can be really interesting to notice. You want this, and the answer is yes. And if there's freedom to eat when you're hungry, and no worry or concern about that, one bite can be very stress-free. Very stress-free. And you could just really notice, push the pause button on that moment, test it out for yourself while you're eating something. Next time that you eat, we get a chance to eat all the time. You want it. Is it true? Now allow yourself to move 2 or 3 bites into whatever it is that you're eating. And it does not matter what you're eating. What you can notice is if you think the thing that you're eating is horrible and terrible for you, and you're the most awful person, that here you are again eating this thing, and you know you shouldn't, and all that kind of garbagey thoughts, right? Just really, really self-critical, negative, resistant thoughts about this, and you're just so sure that you have the answers about the whole future of your health and everything. All right. Still check. It can be really interesting to have something that you think you've been full of craving for, and you always overeat, and by the way, it's junk food and you shouldn't be eating it. And I'm not saying it's a great idea to eat it. It's just having an open mind about it instead so many closed, rigid, solid ideas about these different kinds of foods and the good and the bad list, and that it's right or that it's wrong. There's always a right and wrong when it comes to every bite of food, and there's fatness and thinness, and we know which direction we're going in depending on what's being eaten or not. Just if you could forget those stories, see if you want it after a couple of bites. Sometimes people are shocked when they do this meditation because they find out that the thing they thought they loved so much loses its interest or flavor or taste, and something just seems a little plastic or fake about it. If it's called junk food, it's funny that we use the word junk, very interesting, but that it's got chemicals and not very many natural things in it. But you can even be looking at this with something that is completely acceptable on your list of do's and don'ts about food. This is somehow to get back to that place where we can have an open experience about what's happening, and that eating's happening in this world, and that you can check if you want something or not. Really, you get to decide, or you get to feel it. Now here's what I love sharing and what I love noticing about this is when you get a few bites, or it can be quite a few bites, like a whole portion, a whole serving, a whole dish, or a bowl, depending on how hungry you were beforehand, there is always an end to wanting it. There's always an end to wanting it in that moment. We'll say to ourselves, I just would want it forever. I want to eat it and eat it and eat it and ignore everything that's happening in the body. But you wouldn't be here if you wanted it, if you were just free and joyfully wanting it and living your life, having it be okay to want it, and also just noticing that thought, because you actually don't. I mean, that's what I notice, is I actually don't. Something's very compelling and something's really interesting going on here, which is what we're studying with our incredible urges and cravings that seem to happen. I used to feel so taken over by the trance of eating and binge eating. But that was a different thing than wanting it. I wanted something else, not the food. My stomach was sick. I felt stuffed. We know the nausea, the lethargy, the anxiety, the pain, the indigestion, how bad that feels, actual weight gain that happens, stiff joints. We know what that feels like, or headaches. We don't want that. We actually don't want it. So it's just being able to say, is it true? And slow down enough to let yourself have your own truth, your own answer, without it coming from somebody else or somewhere else that's told you what you should or shouldn't want. Find out if you do or do not, and you may be very surprised that when you have had something, even the most wonderful food, it's supposed to be incredibly healthy for you, you get done eating it. But the same with those enticing, tantalizing foods that are made for cravings, to supply cravings. But really, if you stay with it and just let yourself feel your body and the whole of you as if this is a new moment for the very first time, you can really find who would you be without the thought that you want it. And you can turn it around. I don't want it. Is that just as true or truer? I don't. So it's not necessarily the case. Now, if there's things happening in that moment and a lot of opposing thoughts and feelings and habits of the ways you're dealing and working with anxiety and churned up energy and getting some pleasure in life, and all the different reasons, feeling powerless about things, not wanting to do another task. There's all those thoughts that are all floating and careening around in there and vying for attention. And sometimes we're eating because those are happening, or even just the fear of getting fat. We must be thin. That can be just such an open blanket kind of statement that it can run all your senses of just pure instinct, pure, like just the natural process of hunger, fullness, relaxation. You just miss all that because there's so many thoughts and feelings churning through the mind. But it's nice to know food doesn't cure any of those. Those keep going whether I have eaten or not. And no matter how many times I didn't binge once, I binged as a habit regularly. I kept doing it. It seemed to be required on a regular basis, and I really believed I wanted it, and that something was wrong with me about that. And I was just missing that I wanted other things. And you can journal or sit and relax and rest and see what else it is that you actually want. I want peace. I want to question the thoughts that are in my head at this moment. I want to inquire. I can ask, is that true about anything that I'm thinking? Any worries that I have, do they need to be handled immediately and now? I really, really, absolutely must control myself so that I'm thin. Is that true? It's a whole nother inquiry, and we'll do that another time. It can sort of pale or put a shadow on everything around food and eating and make it so food is more interesting and you think that you want it when you don't. Because there's a rebel inside. And the body doesn't like being incredibly hungry if it doesn't need to be. So just try that today. I know it's a very, very simple thought, but see if you can pause and do the 4 questions with the thought that you want it when you are not hungry. That's the key point. And just to see the motion and the movement of things shifting, what wanting is, and then acquiring something, and then having that relax, and then we move to the next thing, whatever's changing in the environment, that it seems to happen. But it's not desperate if it's not there, and it's not terrible if it is. Just letting things be as they are. Relaxing with the motion even of hunger and fullness. All right, let me know how it goes. Bye.